This weekend, 28 years later, The Bone Temple drops in theaters. I actually saw this movie a month ago at a leaked screening, but I wasn't able to share my full thoughts about it until this week. So let's talk about it. While I'm talking, be sure to join me down below in the comments section. Let me know, what did you think about Bone Temple, and give me that point of reference. What do you think about the rest of the 28 franchise, in particular 28 years later? Also, I recorded a spoiler review of this movie over on Heavy Spoilers that'll drop sometime over the next few days. It was a ton of fun to get to talk movies with him, and we went into all the details, just walking through the whole plot of the movie. So hopefully you can check that out. And if you want to know my specific thoughts on with spoilers about this movie, it's coming this weekend. And let's get started with the review. And just to give you a point of reference on where I was at coming into Bone Temple, I was very mixed on 28 years later. The great parts in that movie were awesome. Parts of it were poignant, beautiful, horrifying, thrilling, exciting. But I found it to be just a very uneven movie that was experimental, but unevenly experimental, where it felt like each act, each scene was directed by a different person. The first act of the movie did all these intercutting with medieval battle sequences, and so it was a very specific stylistic choice that didn't continue throughout the entire movie. Of course, the final scene of the movie has the Jimmy cult show up, and it's like Teletubbies, Power Rangers out of nowhere. And then all the Dr. Kelson sequences are quite beautiful and reflective. And it just felt very uneven to me. Like I never found the groove of the movie, or as soon as I felt like I was getting in sync with it, it shifted tones, vibes, and storylines. So great parts, but I didn't like the flow of the movie as a whole. All of that said, Bone Temple is the best movie in the franchise since the original. This, to me, was a massive improvement over 28 years later, that it was able to kind of pick a focus, story, tonally, and stylistically, in a way that I felt could be terrifying, beautiful, but felt like those went together. Like, there are very big tonal shifts between the plot lines with Dr. Kelson and the Jimmy cult, but all of it feels consistent within itself and intentional, and not in the way that I felt it just was an inconsistent movie with 28 years later. So from beginning to end, I was invested in the movie and the journey that we were on, because it kind of picked two storylines that explore this world, different reactions to this world, explore humanity from different sides, but you could see the through line between them. They're very different, but they're parallels. The whole movie is filled with parallels, and eventually they merge together on a story and a tonal level. This is probably the least infected, centric movie in the franchise thus far. There is a way in which the infected are very important to the story, in particular with Kelson's plotline and what he's doing. But it's not a movie that is about carnage candy. If you're showing up just for nonstop action, terrorizing infected, just eating people, that's not what this movie is. It, however, is probably the gnarliest, goriest, and most terrifying movie in the franchise. That, while it's not necessarily the infected nonstop eating people, this movie from the opening scene puts you on the edge of your seat, and you just feel that tension and suspense all the way up until the credits roll at the end of the film. Just the opening sequence, it involves the Jimmy gang, Spike being initiated into the group. As I mentioned before, I didn't like their introduction in 28 years later, and this movie immediately course corrects it. That it creates this sequence where you just feel tense in your whole body, like, oh crap, Spike's in trouble. And it never lets up. You feel that just tightening of your whole body the entire movie. It's a movie that consistently makes big, bold choices that if you told me 2 months before this saw the movie, hey, in the movie they're going to do this. Hey, in the movie, Dr. Kelson does this. In the movie, this happens. I'd be like, ooh, I don't like the sound of that. Like, out of context, you'd be like, that is not the right direction to go. But the movie works its way and earns its way to those moments. So when you get this big, bold moment, even the trailer picture of Kelson, all in the war paint and stuff with the bone temple, that sequence is awesome. But if I just described it to you independent of context, you'd be like, oh dear, what are they doing? But it builds and earns these big, bold choices that it makes all throughout the entire movie. This is a film that leans into the familiar zombie infected movie trope where the humans turn out to be the bigger threat than the infected or the zombies, which has been overplayed in a number of different films. And so when I said that in my initial out of the theater reaction to the movie, as well as some tweets about the film, some people are immediately like, ooh, I don't like the sound of that. That's making me nervous because we've done that before. Like, I want the carnage candy. The movie finds such a great way to tell that story, though, that it is exploring the infected. They are a big part of the story, but it's such a compelling look at humanity and how beautiful and loving it can be and what friendship can look like and how horrifying and dehumanizing it can be. There's ways in which there's almost like thematically T-tube vibes going on here, where in Terminator 2, the Terminator is learning the value of human life, where Sarah Connor has turned into a Terminator that's out to kill someone. And there's this reversal of roles. And there's a lot of things like that in this movie, where they find ways to just kind of find a new angle in how society's degenerated, but other people continue to have hope. And that's what makes like that, the parallels, the exploration, the character work in this very tense film is what makes it so good. The story structure is fairly straightforward, that we're following Spike, who has gotten himself stuck in the Jimmy cult, that at the end of the last movie, they save him and he's joining them. And from the opening scene, you realize, oh crap, he's in trouble. He needs to get out of this thing. And he knows he needs to get out of it. He doesn't know how, though. That he's found himself with incredibly dangerous people who are forcing him to do things that will scar him for life. That he absolutely cannot stand, that he has to do these things, see these things, but he's stuck in it. And he's with the dangerous cult as they go and attack people. And he's one of them. And he absolutely does not want to be. And so it's just gut-wrenching because you're seeing a violent, killer, cruel cult murder people, torture people from the inside, from the perspective of someone in it. And it's brutal. And this is contrasted with this plot line with Dr. Kelson, who is continuing to run his experiments and doing stuff with Samson, the alpha infected, the Gigantor. There were reports that there weren't going to be any zombie infected penis in this movie. That is false. There is still a lot of male infected nudity in this film, and this whole sequence with him, and this very strange bond that forms between them with the experiments that Kelson is running. And this is where there's so much of this movie that just finds a way to be beautiful, poignant, thoughtful, reflective, in ways that if you just described it independent from the context of the movie and what he's doing, it would sound ridiculous. And this is also why it's so important in this context to also distinguish the difference between zombies and infected. And in this movie, that's an incredibly important distinction where I'm trying to avoid using the word zombie, besides the fact that I use the word zombie in my tweets about the movie, and I got called out about it, rightfully so. Because in this movie, if you're an infected person, you can do something with an infection. Versus if you're just the undead zombie, and this whatever that is something different. And so it explores that and gives, once again, another perspective to what's taking place here and what they do with Samson. And there's parts of it where you kind of see the world from his perspective. And it's very cool. And it just continues to find a new angle to do all of these things that we're doing. But this is kind of the juxtaposition of the movie. You have the cult plotline that's intense, constant suspense, anxiety-driven, cruelty, torture-driven. There's a sequence in a barn, the most horrifying sequence in this entire franchise. And it leads to some payoff where it's like, yeah! But also just, once again, you just feel sick to your stomach. And characters in the movie feel sick to their stomach because it's so grotesque what takes place. And it's contrasted with the Fiennes plotline, the Kelson plotline. That's a very kind of sweet, almost sentimental, almost a story of friendship. It's like in the same movie, and because they're meant to be these parallels, it works. For me, there weren't really any lulls in the movie. It did a nice job of like being really intense and then having breathing room whenever we would cut back over to Kelson in his plotline, that back and forth. Across the board, performances were rock solid. Of course, Ralph Fiennes is a top actor and has been for 40 years. And he's someone that's willing to go there. This is a movie that requires him to be a very odd, but very sweet and caring person. And it gives him several moments of just pure insanity of what he kind of has to do. Like, he has to play moments that are ridiculous, but with utter sincerity, and he's so good at it. The poster sequence in the movie had my audience in applause. Like, burst out with applause at the poster sequence in the movie. And he just goes for it. It is so good. And one of these things that only works because you fully established him and his understanding of people, as well as the world that he's in and everything kind of going around him. It's so good. But he's got a complex arc involving fear, compassion, attachment, sacrifice. There's so much in there. And on the flip side, you have Jack O'Connell, who's playing the leader of the Jimmy cult, as Jimmy himself, who's sadistic, chilling, but has this kind of like just carefree, like in these scenes that are so tense and you know violence is coming. He's just chill and relaxed, having a good time. And he's crazy, but the movie allows him to have just a few moments where it actually kind of, the mask comes off and you get to kind of hear from him. And there's a psychosis and there's a crazy in there, but there's also just enough of a person trying to make sense of this insane world. Spike is a little bit of a one-note character, but intentionally so. That he's that sweet boy from the previous movie, but set in a context where he's just terrified from beginning to end. He's kind of stuck on that one note. And that's not really criticism. That's just inherently the nature of the situation that he's in. He does a good job with it. Say that Erin Kellyman is an actress that's been in a number of things, and I've never been super crazy about her. This is by far the best that she's been, where she's a member of the Jimmy cult, but she's someone that has a little bit of like a different, challenges, she's engaging in the activity, but she has more of a sensitivity. She isn't as dehumanized as the rest of the cult, and likewise has some skepticism. And so there's this balance there, and it kind of ties into another one of the themes in this movie, where there's just a lot of like people living in lies, where everybody knows we're lying to each other, but they go along with it. In particular, the Jimmy cult. How much do they buy into him? How much are they just trying to fit in? How much is he lying to himself? How much does he know that people, like, there's all these lies that people are buying into, but how much, like, we know that we're lying to each other. And these ideas that keep being explored throughout the movie and from different angles of the truth versus deception and the lies we believe just so we can make it through the day in an insane context. It's also a movie just jam-packed with biblical allusions. Like, our alpha's named Samson. But just even the way that when, especially get into the third act, there's a lot of sacrilegious imagery. It is an atheistic film. It's overtly an atheistic film filled with biblical imagery and allusions, and a psychotic lead character that is committed to Satan. and a heroic character that is overtly an atheist. But just all sorts of biblical allusions. And in a context that I didn't find it wasn't offensive to me, the way that it's done, because it is in a pocket universe that's not intention, like it's not, to me, I didn't take it as offensive to my own personal faith, though it is overtly sacrilegious imagery in other regards. But it's just kind of filled with thoughtful parallels, inversions of faith, inversions of biblical images, all kind of tied into this insane world that in conflict between Kelson and the Jimmy cult and everything kind of going on. It's a very layered film. It's a very literary film. It's filled with biblical allusions, but not in an alienating sense. Not in a way that if you're not aware of what it's referencing, you lost it, but in the sort of way that rewards second viewings, or you pick up on something, and as you talk to other people, you realize just how much is going on in the film. On a visual level, it's a more cleaner, traditional studio style than the experimental style of the previous film where, Danny Boyle was shooting on iPhones, and just a little bit grittier. And then obviously the intercutting and all that stuff that he did. This is a much more straightforward aesthetic. For me, that was very much a positive, and even in other regards, I don't mean that as a negative. It's still like a gorgeous film. It just isn't doing the experimental stuff. It's not that Danny Boyle lo-fi effect that he's done with his films. It has a little bit more of that slicker, cleaner, polished studio look to it. And I don't mean that, I really don't mean that in the negative sense. It's just contrasting it with the Danny Boyle style of his movies. As a film in the franchise, the end of this movie closes out the arc of this film. It's not immediately obvious what the plot of the next movie will be, but it absolutely opens a few threads at the end that teases you, like, oh, I want to see where that's going, like in a big way. You're like, oh, what are we doing there? But it's not like a major plot point. It resolves its own plot threads, and at the end introduces something new to get you excited for the future of where things are headed. For me, this movie was a big, gigantic win. I left 28 years later with a lot of mixed feelings. I left this movie just excited for the movie that I got. And the more I've talked about it, and it really helped doing a spoiler review with heavy spoilers right before this. And as he would say something and be like, yeah, I love that. And I'd start talking and I realized how much more I appreciated the film in the way that it's able to just have beautiful relationships contrasted with horrific belief systems, side by side, cutting between the two of them, and just tension and then poignant reflection, side by side, feeling consistent. To me, this was a big, gigantic win. Maybe I could have done with a little bit more infected carnage, something like that. Maybe it would have been nice to have, like, you show up to these movies wanting that, and it doesn't really give you that, but it replaces it with something so much deeper than just carnage candy. And that's why this movie worked for me and was a big win inside of this franchise. Overall, it's an A- on the entertainment scale, 8.5 out of 10, and this is a must-see for 28 fans, for zombie-infected fans, or people that just are horror fans in general. This is a big, gigantic win. It's a thoughtful film, it's a gruesome film, it's a tense film. It wins across the board. You should check this one out. This is our first big, gigantic win of 2026.